listening to the Dogs Are People 2 podcast presented by Dingle Days. I'm your host, Geryah Dingle, and I believe anything can be learned. If you believe that's true as well, then keep listening because this is the #1 show to bring you the best tips, strategies, and technologies for pet parents. So let's get after it. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about your dog's behavior and how it's a reflection of you. Yeah, that's something that's been on my mind for quite some time now. And I don't know, give me a comment down in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that your dog's behavior or the things that you do in your life or the atmosphere affects the type of dog or breed you have? I know there are some things in the genes, right? And some very selective breeding with regard to what we, intend to get out of a dog, whether it be a working breed or, just a domestic pet or just anything to that effect. But just in the broad sense of terms, without getting too like specific, this has been on my mind with regard to whether or not a dog's behavior is a reflection of you. Because oftentimes, many times we think of a dog in terms of the way we think of like maybe our children, right? Maybe not on the same level, maybe for some of us quite so. In the sense that kind of what you get in is what you put out. So just leave me a note in the comment section below if that's something that you agree with, or if you have some different thoughts about it. We're gonna be friendly here. So if you're listening in on YouTube or the replay on your podcast app of choice, that is what we're talking about: your dog's behavior and whether or not it's about you. So I'm just going to be going through a few thoughts and covering a brief study from a university in Budapest that looked at 14,000 dogs of various breeds and did like a somewhat of a psychological study with regard to the environments, the history, and a lot of other factors with regard to the effect of the environment on the dog's behavior and the type of dog that was in your presence per se, based on some factors about how you go about your daily life. That's what we're talking about today. If you're just joining us, your dog's behavior and whether or not it's about you. Like you get out what you put in, brother, with regard to that. And I know many of us have heard that when it comes to, again, that analogy of your children or anything you really sow into. You kind of get in or get out, rather, what you put in. So that's kind of the messaging that I'm driving home. And of course, there's a number of factors that can affect that. But I mean, just generally speaking, without like going specifically line by line in this study, even just the amount of time that you spend with your dog, I think it was something to the effect of, and I'll leave the source in the description below. The folks that spend like, let's say, 3 active hours with their dog, generally speaking, have a more calm, more settled, more easy to train dog. So the more time, active time that you spend with your dog, kind of can help settle your dog in. Now this isn't surprising to me. This isn't like some deal breaker per se. These are some things that maybe you might just guess, maybe just guess that spending time with your dog would have an effect on the type of dog that you have. But it's just kind of been on my mind a little bit lately because when things get busy, when things get when you get out of your routine, you start to notice these things a little bit more, and you're like, what's changed? What's changed? Have you ever missed the walk? Leave me a comment down there if you've ever missed your walk, right? If you miss your walk and you didn't get that exercise for your dog and you're wondering why they're running all over the place, and sure, you may have a crate or something um, when they're not out and about in your home or wherever your dog roams, it makes a big difference. That active time, giving that attention, right? That attention to your dog, wherever their place is in your family. So with that, in Emotional 2000, I see that I believe our emotions can affect our pets. If we're sad, they can be sad. Exactly. That's so very, very true. I know many people have seen that picture of the dog. This is kind of more of a sad story, right? But they've seen that dog like at the foot of the casket, right? And its owner is gone, and it's in a room that's pretty somber, right? And it's like, is this dog actually depressed? Is this dog actually sad? They have real feelings, right? They have real feelings. And I can tell that my dog knows when I'm elated, and he gets on my level. He's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's gotten into you, but I am with it. And then, when I'm not so cheerful or joyful, sometimes I think my dog can sense that as well. And it's like they're kind of vibing with you. So how does that affect your relationship with your pet and the behaviors that you're getting. Whether or not your dog is energetic or chill, shall I say. So, I mean, if you maybe live a more laid back, relaxed, I'm not even going to say necessarily sedentary, but just a laid back, relaxed, kind of chill, you're easygoing life, then perhaps your dog will be a little bit more laid back and chill. Maybe less likely to just be all about everything all the time. If you're just constantly active, your dog may want to hang with you versus if you live a couch potato life. And it's Netflix and whatever your streaming service of choice is for the vast majority of the time. Because that's going to be what they're used to, hour after hour after hour. And the younger you have your dog, or shall I say, the longer you have your dog, the more I think ingrained they're going to get in your routine. Many times we see that without enough proper exercise, right, your dogs start to become victim to all kinds of diseases and health issues that affect actually a lot of humans, right? Like, I mean, even like obesity and overfeeding your dog and not getting them enough activity during the day. There's a lot of great channels out there to talk about this and studies with regard to making sure that your dog gets enough exercise. But even something like that can just bleed over into the lifestyle that you can provide or the type of life that your dog can thrive in. Absolutely. Our pets are interconnected with our lives, right? And definitely a strong bond, and especially the longer you have them. I mean, they're just so loyal, right? You come home and the rest of the house can be tired per se. And it just seems like your dog just is always ready to go one more. Go one more. I think there's like a fitness channel out there, and he's like always at the end of it, he's like, go one more, go one more. And it's like, yes, this is the life of my dog. It is basically go one more. Always ready to get after it with me. Whether you're a loud mouth or you're quiet, right? Or you're quiet. Um, that can have an effect, right? I mean, like we just go back to the analogy of children per se. Is your house like always just loud and everybody's just go go go? Now, granted, some breeds are just going to be more talkative, right? Just more talkative. But I'm saying I think you can have an effect on this environment, and I think most dogs, if not all dogs, right, are trainable, right? There's probably not a untrainable dog. I mean, there's some dogs that probably have been victim to some weird things in the past, and it may place some obstacles in the way. In which case, maybe there's some other recommendations. But generally speaking, dogs are trainable, and the environment can play a big role in that. Cuddly breeds, or kind of somewhat. I'm gonna do my own thing. It's a dog, but it kind of acts more like a cat. No offense to cat people out there. No offense to cat people out there. Is he buddy buddy, or is he kind of strong willed and bold? I don't mean aggressive in like the dangerous sense, but more so just more bold, right? I think that's a more appropriate word because I know when we think aggressive, everybody's like, oh man, of course not. We can't tolerate that. We can't tolerate that. But I'm just talking about environment. I'm just talking about different temperaments and different personality traits, if you will. Personality traits, yes, going after humankind's incessant need to place everything or one in a box. I'm talking about personality traits and how your actions, my actions, can reflect in the type of dog, in the behaviors that my dog exhibits. Again, what are your thoughts on that? Just something that's kind of been on my mind when I just step back and I look at my pet. There's a case study, and I can't pronounce the names of these authors again. I'll leave it in the description or the podcast notes. But dog's personality, this is what the quote says, a dog's personality is not fully set in his genes. Okay. It's not completely just written per se, but it's affected and shaped by his life history, his living conditions, his owner's nature and characteristics, and the social and educational interactions that he has with his owner. Wow. Wow. Life history, living conditions, characteristics, interactions. Yeah, like human beings, just like human beings. So many things that you can affect or at least influence, just like human beings. Wow. And so when I think about that life history, when I think about my dog, kind of grew up from a pup, with a lot of space to roam around, a lot of space to roam around. So, probably not super anxious dog. I mean, it's kind of easygoing, places to roam, lots of exercise, lots of walks, lots of interactions, lots of socialization, not much to compete with. My puppy child, not much to compete with at the time, and that can make a difference as well. And then the characteristics. you know, pretty easygoing from the get-go. I knew I want to train my dog. I want to train my dog. I was so excited to get our German Shepherd puppy, Disney, who's no longer a puppy. Y'all seen him on the channel. Definitely no longer a puppy. But I was so excited to get him and started with structure very, very early on. So I knew the potential, right? German Shepherd. Yes. Yes. I knew the potential. And so I invested in that, and I looked at that just like you would a human being, and like, what are the things that I can influence? The interactions. I remember taking my dog out to Lowe's or to the pet store or to the vet clinic, you name it, just to get them used to the sights, the sounds, the smells, the people, the dogs. So all of these things we have an effect on with regard to our dogs' lives. And these aren't necessarily breed specific. Like, of course, you're going to have maybe some tendencies. Dogs are bred for certain things, and you might get a crossbreed that has a mix of characteristics. But there are plenty of things that you, the owner, have an effect on. And I think that's something that maybe we don't always think about enough. I can't remember the exact quote, but I think it goes something like, when there is a problem at the end of the leash, you need to look who's on the other end. When there's a problem at the end of the leash, you need to look at who's on the other end. All right. So it's not to say, like, in that immediate instance that, maybe you are necessarily causing the very specific action that's going on, your dog's pulling around or jerking you down the street, who's walking who, that kind of thing. But maybe over time, you've let your dog go without a correction. You've let your dog without letting them know that behavior wasn't acceptable. And now this is the result. Now this is the result. Yes, you're embarrassed, right? I think that's really where this thought came up with regard to this subject. When you get embarrassed by your dog in public, there's no point in being embarrassed by your dog in public, because at the end of the day, it's not the dog's fault. It's not the dog's fault. The dog's being a dog, right? And he's just living in your world. He is just living in your world and is going to do doggy things, right? When he does something based on an interaction and something positive happens on the end, he's more likely to do it again, to repeat it. If he does something and there's something negative, or at least none positively reinforced, they're probably not going to do it again, right? Because there's no reward. I was working with my dog the other day, just in the house, and we were just kind of working on him chilling in the living room while we're watching a movie, without getting into things. And I think he started to realize, and if you can get your dog to shape a behavior, I mean, you want to shape it, but if you can get your dog to do it on their own, because they realize, when I do this thing, this X positive thing happens. I just basically had my little treat belt going on, and every time he laid down on the floor and just relaxed, or on his bed and just relaxed, he got a treat, a small treat. This was for duration. This was over some time, because I didn't want to, like, make it like this thing. This is like training him in the environment that it's going to interact. So throughout the day, just do a few iterations of this. So he laid down and he relaxed. Boom. Periodically, he got a treat. Periodically, he got a treat. Then I start to associate that with a command. Some people do settle or place or whatever. And now it's kind of like his default position. It's like his default position. He's out of the crate, in the living room. We're sitting down. What does he want to do? Just go lie down next to us and chill out. Why? Because he has been shaped, he has been conditioned to where that's a positive thing. That's a positive thing. P.S. It doesn't take very much energy for him to just chill out. To just chill out. Yeah, he could go explore and sniff around and get into things, but the reaction on the other end isn't really anything that positive. It's a no. It's a, hey, what are you doing? Get over here, buddy. Don't get into that. Versus, if I just lie here and chill out, I get a treat. I'm gonna do it. So I think sometimes we forget how simple it can be. I think people sometimes overcomplicate dog training. I mean, there's definitely some complex competition obedience behaviors that we're nowhere near on that level in some of the things that I have seen dog trainers accomplish. So good on you. But the basics, at the very root of it, positive results come from positive reinforcement and corrections when the dog doesn't do what you want him or her to do. So you got to communicate. Don't just stand silent, because just allowing the behavior to happen, right? Just allowing the behavior to happen and not saying anything is not necessarily helping. So you got to communicate. I know there's a lot of different schools of thoughts on that one. Hey, should you correct your dog? And sometimes the correction is just the absence of the reward, the absence of the reward. Or, if you're doing positions or something, sometimes I'll correct Disney, I'll say no, and then he goes to the correct position and I'll say yes. Voice is the clicker, shall I say. So don't forget how much of an effect you can have on the dog. And sometimes it's a lot simpler, but don't just look at the results of, or say I say the symptoms of bad behavior. Yeah, communications is key in any relationship. Very true. Don't just look at the person being drugged down the street by their dog, because I can almost guarantee you there's a lot of things that were happening over time that resulted in that behavior. A lot of things were probably allowed to just be let go. A lot of things were allowed to slip through when a correction should have been made or an adjustment should have been made. And now you have a problem that's going to be a little bit more difficult to overcome. We've probably heard the saying where it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, or they're kind of somewhat stuck in their ways. And it's not that they can't learn new things, right? They can learn new things. I think someone put a twist on it. They said it's hard to teach your old dog new things. But if you come in with fresh eyes as a new person, it's not going to be as hard for that external person, right? A lot of folks volunteer. I know I volunteered at maybe your local humane society, and you help train the dogs and teach them more calming type behaviors to make them more attractive for adoption, per se. A lot of those dogs, some of them, they have different stories, but some of them were given up for bad behavior, maybe, or just a family that just couldn't adjust or didn't want to train their dog. And then, yeah, they had that symptom that you see. Okay, the dog's pulling someone down the street, but what about the history, the living conditions, the nature, and the characteristics? Yeah, yeah, exactly. Consistency comes to mind when it comes to teaching a dog new tricks. Exactly. So that new person can come in, handler can come in with that dog that's been left in the shelter and give them a second chance, because they don't bring all the baggage, right? They don't bring all the baggage. They go back to, when you're thinking about the problem on the end of the leash, look at the other end. They just go back to the basics. Hey, I want to get this dog to sit. Hey, if he sits, I'm going to reward it. If he doesn't, I'm not, or whatever works for that particular dog, right? And don't take this to say, hey, abuse your dog or anything like that. Don't go extreme like that. I'm just talking about at the simplest level, positive reinforcement, corrections when things don't go, as you guided, can provide clarity for the dog. And then consistency over time can build habits. And then over time, that'll build a lifestyle where your dog and you can thrive. Not necessarily everything is tied to the genes. You have a big influence on a lot of the things that go on in your dog's life and the type of lifestyle that you can have with your dog. Just remember that this will be available on the replay on your podcast app of choice. We have new episodes every other Wednesday. And don't forget to leave us a comment, or a review rather, wherever it might be on your app of choice, with regard to your thoughts on the podcast. Some of these personality traits, getting back to the behaviors, some of these personality traits: calmness, trainability, sociability, boldness, right? Calmness, right? Not everybody wants a super calm dog, but you can have an effect on this, right? You can have an effect on this, right? Because in the study, when I'm referencing that university in Hungary study, it's talking about calmness as being defined as a trait that reflects how reactive a dog is to events occurring around them. How reactive a dog is to events occurring around them. So you can help shape this, right? As you slowly build distractions over time, right? You want to get a basic behavior down packed with like nothing going on, right? Before you train outside, you may want to train inside. Before you train around other people, you may want to just train by yourself. Before you train in an unfamiliar environment, you probably want to train in a familiar environment, right? And as you progress and your dog gets used to more and more stimuli and distractions, you may not have to start from the same place that another trainer or handler may have to start, because the dog already has a foundation, right? They've built some things, right? So they may not have to start at the same place. But just like children, maybe, right? The things you don't reinforce, you don't go back and review. I'm not going to say they lose it, but they may not be as sharp. They may not be as sharp. I did a video the other day on the Dingle Days YouTube channel. Please subscribe for new future content, as always. But I did a video the other day on distinguishing between the dog sit, down, and stand commands, because that was something early on we did with Disney, and like in his basic level 1 obedience. And it's a drill that we haven't really done in a while. We've been doing a lot of scent detection, canine nose work around the house, in the yard, and just working on some other things. But I wasn't really working on that too much, and it kind of started to become sloppy. It became sloppy. Does it mean that he doesn't know what sit is, or down, or stand? No, doesn't mean he doesn't know. But these are things that if you don't review them, especially if you start to let things go, right? Maybe in the beginning you reward for taking his time and sitting, but you don't necessarily not reward if he's not sitting very fast. You know, maybe in the beginning you reward when he lies down, but you don't necessarily not treat if he like puts his hip out slightly to the side, right? And then you start talking to some of these handlers and these dog trainers, and maybe in the beginning they let a lot of that stuff go because you're trying to shape the behavior. But when they say down, they mean, a certain position, right? Exactly. When they say stand, they're not looking for those paws to move. They're not looking for those paws to move. Rinse, wash, and repeat when it comes to training our pets. Exactly. Same thing, same thing. So many analogies that are similar to raising things, right? Raising things up. Trainability, a personality characteristics of dogs, right? Some dogs are going to be more apt to training than others, right? Just by breed, right? Some folks cheat. I'm gonna say they treat. Border collie owners, where you at? Where you at? You get a border collie. One, I hope you have a lot of time, because very very active mind, very very active mind, but very trainable dogs. Very trainable dogs. Very smart. Shepherds, of course. I'm a little biased. I'm a little biased. And there's a lot of dogs that are up there, kind of the top, and then you have your other dogs that aren't so just in the genes per se, in the breeding apt for training. But I think all dogs are trainable, but you may have to work a little harder with some than others, right? You can help shape the trainability of your dog by just starting some of your training a little bit earlier, by making training a positive experience, and by getting to know your dog. Some of the best things I've heard from trainers out there is, what works for this dog may not work for that dog. There's a big Petco, I'm not gonna say scandal, but like there's a big Petco conversation going on right now because Petco has just recently basically denounced and banned and basically called folks that use e-collars and things of that nature. They're basically like, purely positive as what they're advocating for, and they're basically associating those techniques with not being purely positive and putting a bad spin on it. And regardless of how you feel on the issue, some dogs respond to a basic leash correction. Some dogs respond to just a change in your tone of voice. Some dogs respond to uh, a different type of lead or whatnot. I mean, and it goes on and on and on and on. And the schools of thought, there's a lot of opinions out there. So this episode is not about that. But different things work for different dogs. So in order to kind of shape trainability, one, you got to train, right? You can't tell me a dog's not trainable and you don't really spend any much time training. What do you know about it? And the other thing is you got to know your dog, because just because it worked for my dog doesn't mean it's going to work for yours. Sociability. Sociability, okay? How a dog interacts with humans and other dogs in their life. Well, if you want your dog to be able to interact with humans and other dogs in their life, then you might want to get some other humans and dogs in their life. And I'm not saying go out and buy another dog just for the purpose of training your dog, right? And within that study, if you go back and read it for yourself, you'll find that dogs that are housed or live with other dogs are actually more trainable dogs. But that's definitely not an excuse to go out and get another animal. And there's a lot that goes with that, right? A little bit of pack mentality. If we go back to the children analogy, a lot of times if you have a younger sibling, they do a lot of things much faster than the older siblings. A lot of times because they want to keep up, or just maybe because they see it in their lives right there and they're ready to go. Same thing with dogs. If you have a well-behaved dog, it's not automatic, but it definitely helps to shape the behavior of the pack, shall I say? Not automatic, but definitely doesn't hurt if you have that training built in within your household. So yeah, bring around those distractions, socialize your dog early and often, and you can avoid some of the sociability problems that come up later that are really hard to break through in a fearful dog later on. Dogs don't like to be surprised, right? They don't like to be surprised. So the more things you can put out in front of them early when they're just curious and in a controlled environment, and then slowly build up that capacity. Because really, what you want is a confident dog, so confident that they're not really worried about a lot of these other things. And you're always going to be fighting against prey drive, and that's higher in some dogs than in others. But you can help shape, right? Through the history, through the living conditions, through the interactions. This is your role. This is where you can help. And lastly, boldness. Basically, it's the opposite of fearful. It goes back to what I was talking about with regard to confidence, right? You can help build boldness by helping to shape your dog not to be so fearful. And even when we talk about humans, one of the things at the root of fear is the unknown, right? Is the unknown. Each dog is very different. And there is a fear of the unknown, right? So the more things from that sociability aspect that you can get in front of your dog, especially early, you can help build some boldness, right? You can help build a confident dog that's like, hey, there's nothing to that dog that's walking by right now. That dog's no threat to me. That dog's no threat to me. That human is no threat to me. That loud noise, no threat to me. That construction site, no threat to me. And I'm not saying, hey, have your dog just go through a bunch of dangerous situations and don't train them with proper restraints and stuff like, don't go to certain places or don't get into certain things. I'm saying a healthy confidence in your dog helps breed boldness, the opposite of fearfulness, right? So just think about some of these things that you can have an influence on. Just some interesting thoughts. Don't get embarrassed by your dog. Do the work. Don't get embarrassed. Just do the work. You can affect the calmness, the trainability, the sociability, and the boldness of your dog. You can affect the history, the living conditions, the characteristics, and the influences in your dog's life. If you got something out of this, leave us a comment down in the YouTube section and a review on iTunes. This is the first time that we're doing the show live. A few hiccups early in there, and we'll just keep doing this. I think if you like this, we'll do it again. I definitely thought it was neat just doing the show live, and definitely appreciate the audience out there. But until next time, just continue to get after it. You've just listened to an episode on the Dogs Are People Too podcast presented by Dingle Days. If you like this episode, make sure to leave me a review on iTunes and share this episode with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag me at Dingle Days. If you want even more good stuff, make sure to go over to www.dingledaysphotography.com to find the show notes in our blog and head over to our Dingle Days community on YouTube so that you can connect with other followers of our training methods there. I can't wait to see you there, and thanks again for listening in. Until next time, continue to get after it and share your best life with your furry friend.